Chapter 7. Wolf watched Winifred go, knowing he could do nothing to bring her back while in his wolf form. Arnon ran through the woods toward her, but he called the wolf back with his mind. Then he saw Dolan coming through the forest on horseback, followed by Stefan. He didn't like for anyone to see him like this. Wolf ran into the witch's secret lair and curled up on her bed. Then he willed himself to turn back into a human, but it was getting harder and harder to want to go through the change. Every time he had the urge to be in wolf form, he'd also had an urge to stay that way forever. He figured it had something to do with the witch's curse. He stretched out on the bed, and his legs grew longer and his snout shorter. He hated this feeling, as it was ghastly. It made him so dizzy and was so painful that he just wanted to die. His fur was gone now, and in its place was his skin. Instead of 4 feet, he had 2. And the only thing to remind him he was even a wolf at all was the feeling that he wanted to kill anyone who came through that door. "My lord!" His squire walked into the hut, and without being able to stop himself, he jumped up off the bed and lunged for the boy. Wolf took the young man down and started beating on him. The feeling growing within him wanted to destroy anything within reach. "Nay!" cried the boy, fighting back. But he was no match for Wolf's strength. Then Sir Stefan came through the door. The sound of his sword being pulled from his sheath made Wolf look up and growl. "Hugh, you're not in wolf form," his brother reminded him. "Now remove yourself from the boy immediately, or I will be forced to use my sword to make you do it." That knocked some sense into him. Wolf quickly got up and turned his naked body around, running a weary hand through his hair. He wanted to help Dolan to his feet, but was afraid to turn around to do it. His anger had gotten out of control, and it was because he saw the witch trying to hurt Winifred. "My lord." He turned to see his squire handing him his cape. "Nay," he said, shaking his head, feeling like he didn't deserve it. "Take it. I insist." He turned to face the boy again, and saw that he'd blackened not only the squire's eye, but also busted his lower lip. His squire was bleeding. Bid the devil. What did I do? He snatched the cape from the boy and wrapped it around himself to hide his nakedness. "You hurt your squire," said Sir Stefan. "This boy has risked his life more than once to protect you." "I'm sorry, Dolan. I'm not sure why I did that." "It's all right, my lord." Dolan wiped his hand across the blood in his mouth. "You were angry, and you tried to save the girl." "The girl? Where is she?" asked Sir Stefan, scanning the area. "And what is this hidden room?" "She's gone, and so is the witch who did this to me." Wolf took his fist and smashed it into the wall. "God's teeth! Now I have nothing to bargain with when it comes to the Earl. I also have a witch to contend with. My rage grows each and every day. One of these times I'm afraid I'll kill someone I truly care about." He looked over to Dolan, and the boy lowered his head. "Can you ever forgive me, Dolan?" The squire didn't say anything, just stared at the floor and nodded his head. "Sir Stefan, Dolan, I'd like to ask you both to help me before it's too late." "Too late? For what?" Dolan looked up with curious eyes. "I thought I hated no one more than the Earl for torturing me, but now I see that I hate the old hag more. She's turned me into an animal with urges that I can't control. So I'm going to go after her and kill her. I want you two to help me trap her if you would." "Would this break your curse, my lord?" Dolan had hope shining in his eyes. "Aye. How do you know it won't seal your curse forever if you do away with the old hag?" asked Stefan. "I don't know, but I have a suspicion there is someone who does know." "The girl?" asked Dolan. "Nay," said Wolf with a shake of his head. "She's not even sure if I'm a wolf or a man. Who I'm talking about is her grandfather. We've got to lure him away from the castle and into the forest. I will get the information out of him before I kill him." "Kill him?" Sir Stefan looked up in surprise. "I knew you hated him, but the witch is the one you should be trying to stop, not the Earl. If you kill him, it'll only mean war between Tavistock and Babeny. Are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm not sure about anything anymore," answered Wolf. "All I know is that I can't live as both a man and beast much longer. So I'll make something happen. And I can only hope, for all our sakes, that if half of me dies, it's not the part of me that knows how to wield a sword." Winifred didn't stop riding until she made it over the drawbridge and was safe inside the courtyard of Castle Chaserton. She didn't bother to sneak in the postern gate, as this time she was angry and wanted to confront her grandfather about his secrets.
"Winifred, where have you been? I was just going to send out some of my finest knights to search for you."
Her grandfather darted out of the great hall as soon as he saw her and made his way across the bailey to meet her. Several of his guards followed.
"Egads, granddaughter, what is that you're wearing?"
He eyed her bright red cape. "I've been out discovering your secrets, grandfather." She quickly dismounted and was greeted by a stable boy who took the reins of her horse. She reached up and retrieved her crossbow and bolts before he took the steed back to the stable.
"My secrets?"
asked the man in a raspy voice. He sounded out of breath and tired, not at all like himself.
"What about you, sneaking out in the middle of the night and going to the woods alone?"
"How did you know where I'd gone?" She glanced over the man's shoulder to see the guard she'd kissed to keep her secret. He was shaking his head in a silent signal, telling her he hadn't revealed her secret. But now it was obvious he had.
"It doesn't matter. Just don't do it again."
Her grandfather didn't look at her when he spoke for some odd reason. "You aren't going to punish her, my lord?" asked one of the guards. Her grandfather looked up in surprise, as if the idea hadn't even occurred to him.
"Aye, of course," he murmured.
Then he spoke a little louder.
"You will be punished for this, young lady. I can't have you traipsing around the woods in the dark all alone looking like a strumpet. Do you know how dangerous that is?"
"Do you mean dangerous from the wolf, or the witch that disappeared in a puff of green smoke?" Her grandfather's brows arched, and his eyes opened wide. Then he walked closer and spoke in a low voice.
"We will discuss this in my solar, in private," he whispered.
She stormed off to her grandfather's solar, making her way quickly through the corridors, ignoring her handmaiden and the others who tried to stop her to find out where she'd been. Once inside the room, her grandfather entered behind her and closed and locked the door. "I know your secret, grandfather."
"Whatever do you mean? Now sit down, and let's discuss this like adults."
He spoke in a calm manner, instead of blowing up in anger as she expected him to do. She threw her crossbow on the bed and plopped down next to it. "I met the witch, and she almost killed me. If it wasn't for the wolf saving my life, I'd be dead right now."
"Wolf? Which wolf? What color was it?"
"It was big and black and had eyes of steel grey, just like Lord Hugh de Bar." Her grandfather cringed when she said the man's name. His face became ashen.
"What do you know about this man?"
"I know you put him in a cage in the dungeon and beat and whipped him and left him for dead. That's why I set him free. No one deserves that treatment." The man sighed, and sadness filled his eyes. Then he slowly nodded his head.
"You are right, Winifred. I never should have done that. But what do you mean you were the one to set him free?"
"I did it, and I'm not sorry about it," she spat. "I don't care how much you punish me for it. I will not regret my actions."
"I understand."
He nodded slowly, looking at the ground.
"You have no idea of everything that's transpired in the last year."
"Well, then why don't you tell me? While you're at it, the witch said you trapped her and bound her powers. Is that right?" Her grandfather's head snapped up, and his eyes met hers this time. His mouth clenched tightly, and she saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. This was the first thing that seemed to get a rise out of her grandfather today. She wondered if perhaps he was ill. Usually he was much more ornery. He let out a deep breath and settled himself on a chair next to the bed.
"Aye, Lady Winifred. Granddaughter. It is.
How could you have accepted an old, ugly hag into your castle to begin with?
Well, she wasn't ugly at the time, and I had no idea she was a witch. I thought she was a beautiful young maiden named Sheena, when in fact it couldn't have been further from the truth. I let her into the castle walls before I realized just who she was.
Who is this witch, and what do you know about her? Winifred wanted to learn more.
She is Hecuba, a powerful witch who has lived for hundreds of years, or maybe longer.
If she is so powerful, how did you trap her in the hovel, and what kept her there? Are you a warlock, grandfather? He hesitated before he answered, almost as if he couldn't decide.
Nay,
he finally said, shaking his head.
I have no powers, although I wish I did.
Then how did you trick and trap a witch?
I had help from a most unlikely source.
Who? Her grandfather looked at the ground, then raised his head slightly and seemed to scrutinize her, as if he were weighing out the options of telling her more.
You are better off not knowing.
Nay, I want to learn. She jumped to her feet and put her hands on her hips. Tell me all there is to know.
All I'll say is that you need to stay clear of Hecuba. She is dangerous and can shapeshift into anyone or anything. Now that she is loose, no one is to be trusted.
Why did you put her in that room in the knoll? His voice was soft, and it sounded as if it took all his strength to answer.
Her powers are muted when she's underground. I had the room built from the wood of a rowan tree that was in the center of a circle of standing stones, so its power was plenty. It said this wood can bind the powers of magic, and with a little help, it worked beautifully. Too well, actually,
he said, shaking his head and looking to the ground again. She took some of my blood and wanted more. Thank goodness the wolf saved me.
The wolf? Are you sure? No wolf would save a human from another.
Unless it wasn't a wolf at all. She watched for her grandfather's expression. When he didn't say anything, she added more to shock him into telling her what he'd done. It was Lord Hugh de Bar, wasn't it? The black wolf with the steel-grey eyes. He hesitated again, and then just nodded his head.
I'm afraid so. And now that he knows you're my granddaughter, there is no stopping him from coming for me. He'll use you in the process to try to kill me. I've felt his anger growing for a while now. That's why I can't allow you out of the castle again, my dear.
How can you say that? I'm a noble, and free to do as I please.
Not unless you want to end up a dead noble.
He got to his feet and headed for the door.
I will be assigning 2 guards to watch over you night and day. You will no longer go to the woods with my hunting parties either.
Nay, wait! Her grandfather stopped with his hand on the latch of the door, but didn't turn around. Tell me, what did Lord Hugh de Bar do that was so horrible that you wanted to kill him in the first place?
Don't you know?
I've heard you say he killed my parents. Is this true? He never answered her question. Instead, without turning around, he gave her a warning.
Stay away from him, my dear. He's become dangerous and isn't in control of his actions.
I'm not afraid of him. He won't hurt me. He saved me today. Her grandfather turned his head slightly and spoke in a soft voice.
His bloodlust has grown strong over the past year, and his hatred might get in the way of his decisions. He is an animal half the time, and a warlord the other half. He's not to be trusted in this state. Either of them is dangerous. You need to stay away from him before something happens that you will regret.
With that, he left the room and closed the door.